Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to a new episode of Business Insider. I'm your host for tonight, Mohammed Abdurrahim, and tonight we'll be talking about the Egyptian-African Economic Cooperation and Integration. That's the hope. The trade ties between Egypt and Africa. Egypt, the voice of Africa, really. We'll be talking about in detail the sectors, the main sectors that Egypt focuses on when exporting to Africa, the opportunities in Africa, and also the fact that Egypt is the gate to and from its dear continent. So that's our main topic for tonight, Egyptian-African Economic Cooperation and Integration, and we are very happy to have with us here in the studio Mr. Ahmed Kattab, the economic expert. A very good evening to you, Mr. Kattab. Always a pleasure.
To all of you, and it's my pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you very much. Allow us, Mr. Kattab, and allow us, dear viewers, first to watch a report about our main topic for tonight, and then we'll come back and kickstart our discussion. Please stay with us.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli chaired a meeting of the Permanent Higher Committee for Monitoring Egyptian-African Relations, attended by economic ministers and other relevant government officials. This session, part of the government's ongoing efforts to strengthen Egyptian-African ties, focused on enhancing trade relations between Egypt and African countries. At the meeting's outset, Madbouli emphasized the significance of these regular sessions, which monitor Egypt's diplomatic and economic efforts in Africa. He highlighted the government's recent achievements in advancing trade ties with the continent, including initiatives to increase bilateral trade. Madbouli revealed that the Central Bank of Egypt had developed a proposal for establishing more balanced trade deals with African nations. The CBE Governor Advised for African Affairs, Negla Nossi, elaborated on Egypt's growing export presence in Africa. She noted that balanced trade deals now account for 60% of Egypt's total non-oil merchandise exports, a figure that the government plans to expand further. Egypt aims to increase export value by at least 20% annually from 2024 to 2030, targeting $130 billion by 2026-2027 and $145 billion by 2030. Deputy Prime Minister for Industrial Development and Minister of Industry and Transport, Kamil El-Wazir, discussed Egypt's connectivity projects with Africa, focusing on land, rail and maritime transport. Minister El-Wazir highlighted ongoing projects aimed at enhancing infrastructure to link Egypt with African countries, such as the Cairo-Cape Town Road, the Suez-Hurghada, Marsa Alam, Bernice, Halaib Road, and land routes connecting Egypt with Chad, Cameroon, and Libya. He also emphasized the untapped potential of river navigation corridors across Africa, which offer a cost-effective means of boosting trade among the Nile Basin countries.
Welcome back. Thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us, and thanks to Rasha Abdul Hamid and Abir Hussein for this report. Back here in the studio with the economic expert, Mr. Ahmed Kattab, talking about the Egyptian-African Economic Cooperation and Integration. So, Mr. Kattab, historically, Egypt is the gate to and from Africa. That's what geography dictates. And historically, Egypt has been a leader in Africa, a voice for Africa, calling for African integration, one of the founders of the African Union. You know, just about any association in Africa, you'll find Egypt, one of its founders that had the idea behind it. And Egypt really believes in cooperation with its brothers in the continents.
First of all, let me highlight to the historical relationship between Egypt and Africa, starting from President Nasser. President Gamal Nasser built a very strong relation with all African countries, especially the leader country in Africa. And the President Sisi, once he evacuated as a president of Egypt, started to take the same way like President Gamal Abdel Nasser. And all African citizens like Egypt and like Egyptian 100%, because we are very warm and we are similar in a lot of specifics, and we are similar to each other in many different fields, especially Egypt as a key country in Africa and the Middle East have a very strong relationship, and also Minister of Foreign Affairs and a lot of ministers also working in the cabinet, strong bilateral relationship between Egypt and all African countries, especially the key country like South Africa, like Kenya, like Tanzania, like also Nigeria, and a lot of countries. President Sisi, once he located as President of African Union, take a lot of achievement in the field of strengthening the connection between Egypt as key country in Africa and Egypt as a main gate for Africa and all African countries by launching, by strong the spending in infrastructure and send a clear message to all the international world like America, like China, like Russia, please come and invest in infrastructure in Africa because we will support the world in the coming 40 or 50 years at least by the raw material mean essentially in life, especially in food and beverage and in raw material of industry and also raw material of gold and also petroleum sector and liquid gas. And the world need from Africa the power of sun. Africa is a shiny cities, and all the world depend in the future in the green energy like Benban solar energy power start operation in Egypt, and we will connect with Saudi Arabia and make export of electricity from solar energy power from Benban and from a lot of station like Benban station in generating electricity and make covering to local market first and make export of the surplus to the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and we will start to make export of electricity through cable to all Europe. So the world invest in solar energy power in Egypt as a key country in Middle East and key country in South Africa, and Egypt launching this idea to all key African countries in Africa.
Right.
Once we have a surplus electricity, we will have a surplus in industry because we will have electricity by a very cheap price, and electricity is add value to industry, especially in heavy industry, and they add value in transportation and in supporting also infrastructure and the connection with the other country in Middle East and with Africa country and with all the world. So Egypt make a lot of also of agreement, bilateral agreement between Egypt and all African countries, especially in COMESA, and Egypt also make a bilateral agreement and merging in BRICS with Russia and China and India.
And South Africa.
South Africa. So Egypt and South Africa, two leader country in Africa, have a good relation with all the world, and they will be the leader of Africa in the future in commercial and trade, especially.
Along with Nigeria, of course,
along
as well.
with Nigeria and Tunis and others countries. Yeah. But we speak
Morocco,
about...
I guess. Yeah.
Yes, I think at least 12 countries in Africa will be lead the trade in Africa. Especially...
Kenya.
Yeah, Kenya also have a very good situation, especially in growing rate. And this is a success story also as a key country in Africa, especially. So, President Sisi in all meeting and the Prime Minister Dr. Mansour Bouli today focus in increasing bilateral relations with African country and make a marketing of Egypt as Egypt the main gate to Africa in sustainable investment. Why sustainable investment? After Egypt hosting COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, we start operation in the green economy. Why? Because the world focused in the coming 50 years at least in the green economy, especially in green hydrogen and green ammonia, and also the production from recycling also will be take place in Egypt. So Egypt as key country in Africa start operation in Suez Canal logistics area by a lot of agreement with the international community. And I think also President Sisi in COP27 sent a clear message to the international world, please come and invest in Africa, because all the pollution happened in the world, starting from China, from America, from Europe, affect mainly Africa, because we have bad weather after this
and we
pollution.
are not the ones polluting Earth. I mean,
Yes,
it's
yes.
Africa actually is
The most affected country by pollution.
yeah, a continent, of course, and since you mentioned, COP27, of course, November 2022, in Sharm el-Sheikh, I guess that was a clear example where Egypt was a voice for Africa. Egypt was a voice for the developing nations, for the South, for those who are paying the prices of others' mistakes. And I remember when President Sisi held the rotating presidency of the African Union, and then Egypt, had to give it away. He said that Egypt will continue its role in Africa as if it was still leading the AU, and Egypt has kept its promise. And I'm glad that you mentioned, that it was since the days of Nasser that this great a relationship between Egypt and its continent broke out. And we all, of course, remember how Nasser used to support the freedom movements against colonialism, and of course also how the Egyptian cadres, the top Egyptian cadres, doctors and engineers and others helped the progress and development in Africa. Now, so after years, maybe a lost decade or more, with the continent, since the arrival of President Sisi, Egypt has gone back to very strong relations with its continent. Let's talk about some numbers here, Mr. Kattab. So according to the Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics, CAPMAS, and that's a report in late November of this year, late November, so that's just about a few weeks ago, less than a month ago, Egyptian trade ties with AU countries in 2023 reached $9.2 billion, and that's a 5.7% increase from the prior year. It was 8.7 billion. In the export category, there are two African countries. There was a growth for Egyptian exports of 15.6% over the prior year. And in imports, there was a decrease of, well, let me get the number right here. There was an increase in imports by 15.6%, and a decrease in imports by 21.7%. The main countries in Africa that Egypt export to are, in order, according to CAPMAS, Libya, Sudan, Algeria, Morocco, and Kenya. While the five main exporters to Egypt, or the countries that Egypt import to, in order, according to CAPMAS, are Sudan again, Kenya again, Zambia, and South Africa. I have the four countries, yes. And the DRC came in first, Democratic Republic of Congo. Yeah, the main exporter to Egypt within the African continent. DRC, Sudan and Kenya appear in both categories, Zambia and South Africa.
So this is reflected the very strong relation and the bilateral relation between this country and Egypt also, and reflects a very strong relation between President Sisi and this country. Once we have very good stability in Egypt, especially political and economic stability, and economic and political stability in other countries, so will facilitate the process of trade, especially if we have we are similar in the border and the very easy movement of the product from Egypt, for example, to Sudan, and from Sudan to Egypt, because a lot of meats come from Sudan, for example, because Sudan have a very rich this trade, and also a lot of petrochemical sector in Egypt exported to Sudan, for example, because Egypt now leads Africa in export of petrochemical. Why petrochemical?
Very
because
true.
After we have recovering of of any offshore station of liquid gas, we start invest in production of petrochemical sector and increase the export volume by 20% every year. And this is also one reason of surplus in foreign currency located in the Egyptian Central Bank. Also, Egypt lead Africa in export of fresh product. We reach to more than 160 markets in all over the world, not only in Africa. Egypt nowadays make export of fresh orange to Russia, from America to Europe, to also African country, and a lot of Egyptians also product.
Potatoes, strawberries.
And going, because we have Egypt by the nature have an Egyptian River Nile, and have a surplus in Egyptian River Nile. I hope we will have more surplus in the future, because also we have a recycle of water like Bahr al-Bar station, and also we depend mainly in the power of sun in also make recycle of water, especially filtration of water from the Red Sea and Mediterranean Sea also, and this is will support the agricultural sector, especially in Sinai and especially in
of course there is a will to get our rights from the River Nile, and, and not allow any country or any entity to deprive us of our rights, and there is a clear will for that.
And I think President Sisi focused in this file and sent a clear message to the world, and Egypt and the Egyptian military force have the right to protect the Egyptian right in the water of the River Nile, because it's mean life to all Egyptian citizens and life to all African citizens also, because we make export of food and beverage also to all African countries, and Egypt all the time from the old supports the world by food and beverage.
Yeah, and
we support Gaza, we support Syrian countries,
the just causes,
the
just causes. Mr. Kattab, the main key export categories, again according to CAPMAS, to African countries in 2023, some of them you mentioned, but I'm going to say them in order according to the report: cement, gypsum, calcium phosphate, plastics, flour, and starch products. Those are the main exports. The main imports included copper, coffee, tea, spices, and live animals.
Yes.
And you had mentioned Sudan as an example.
Yes, example also.
But Egypt is very strong in the pharmaceutical industry, in the petrochemical industry, as you mentioned, and in other industries as well, in the textile industry. In
car industry,
in the car industry, in the technology.
Especially after the launching of the more than one sector, one key sector in electricity car, and also normal car level working by petrol fuel sector.
Yes. So I was going to ask you, there seems to be much bigger opportunities for Egypt to reach African markets, especially in these areas: pharmaceuticals, petrochemicals, I guess IT, because within Africa, Egypt could export IT. I'm just asking you, you're the expert.
Yes, Egypt will support Africa by information technology, IT sector, and education sector. Egypt have a French university located in Egypt in order to educate to African peoples by French language, because a lot of African countries speak by French, and this is a donation from Egypt to all African countries. Also national training for training youth, hosting a lot of peoples from Africa country and supporting by training in order to be leader once he come back to his country. So in the field of education,
we saw the Sharm el-Sheikh conferences as well, the youth conferences.
Yes, and already we applied this in National Academy for Training Youth, and with a private French university located in Alexandria. I will not speak about the name in order to be clear, but it's a clear university and multinational university focused in education to African people located and hosting mainly covered all the accommodation cost and the university tuition fees cost by Egyptian government to support African people, and President Sisi supports this university by 40 فدان in Burj Al Arab in order to launch a new university hosting more than 5,000 African peoples in Egypt. So this is a huge support in education.
And an indication that Egypt is keen on strengthening, enhancing cultural ties
education
with Africa,
and research will lead the world, and Egypt focus mainly nowadays in the field of education and higher education, especially Minister of Health, Dr.
Khaled Abdul
Abdul, and also Minister of Higher Education, and working together with the Prime Minister in supporting the humanity and supporting upgrading of education to all Egyptian and African citizens also.
I guess the sports field is also an area where Egypt and Africa have seen a lot of cooperation, a lot of, and got cultural ties really to be stronger. The competition in
especially
sports.
football,
Yeah.
lead the country. Now all of us know Brazil because of football. Brazil depends mainly in economic and football. Egypt invests in Mohamed Salah. Mohamed Salah represent income to Egypt like a huge industry. يعني the income of Mohamed Salah per year equal to a huge industry located in Egypt in supporting Egyptian economy by foreign currency. So Mo Salah, as an example, Mohamed Salah may work as an ambassador to Egypt abroad. A lot of international community know Egypt through Salah.
And I'm talking here about the many tournaments or events that Egypt hosts in Africa. I mean, whenever there is a tournament in whichever sport where the host country, for any reason, withdraws or is late in getting the preparations intact, you'll find Egypt jumping and saying, we're going to host the event, we want to have it here. And the sports infrastructure in Egypt has seen a lot of development in the previous years.
Infrastructure?
Yeah, the infrastructure in general.
The tourist infrastructure. A lot of five-star deluxe hotel launching, a lot of resort launching, because if you want to organizing a huge event in sport, you should have a ready infrastructure in order to make hosting to all the guests come to Egypt. So Egypt started to take a lot of launching of many different hotels located in Sharm el-Sheikh, located in Hurghada, located in Luxor and Aswan, and also located in Egypt, in Cairo and in Giza, and in New Alamein city. Also the license to support the movement of the trade between Egypt and all African countries and all the world will facilitate it, and a lot of approval will take through the internet or the internet technology. No need to send a hard copy of papers. A lot of approval takes through the electronic communication. Especially Minister of IT, Dr. Amr, make a lot of achievement in the field. Minister Ahmed, a lot of achievement in the field of IT, and Egypt go to smart country, especially after we launching new Alamein city and the new capital mission city, and especially after hosting many international conference related to Africa, like Invest in Africa, and this is one of the first international conference hosted in new capital in mission city, and it's one reason for surplus and for increase the volume and size of trade between Egypt and all African country, and they present the African country as a very effective country, and all the world, especially China, Russia, America, Europe also search for communication with African countries through Egypt.
And by the way, when sorry to interrupt, but speaking of Egypt strengthening cultural ties with Africa, Nile TV is an example of that. Nile TV International that broadcasts in English and in French, but we have a lot of viewers in our dear beloved African continent. And I remember when I used to present sports programs and say Egypt was playing Nigeria or Cameroon or Senegal or even South Africa, or we had phone calls from these countries and from North Africa as well, of course. We had phone calls, and even from Ethiopia we had phone calls to participate in our programs. So Egypt is definitely keen on taking every step possible to solidify its relationship with Africa in all domains, including, of course, the economic one and the cultural one. Mr. Kattab, there is even a sector within the Central Bank of Egypt called the African Cooperation Sector that was established under the directives of the president in October of 2019. So I guess this is also another indication of how keen Egypt is on cooperation with the sector in the central bank.
Yeah, in order to make a trade between Egypt as a key country in Africa and key country in the Middle East and all African countries, you should have a banking sector to support the process and movement of export and import and the process of trade. The governor of the Egyptian Central Bank take a lot of initiative related to facilitate the process of business between Egypt and Africa country, and the very famous Egyptian National Bank have already a lot of branch in many different countries in Africa, supporting the Egyptian and African people to start operation. This is two Egyptian governmental bank start operation approved from Egypt in African country in order to facilitate the trade and export and import between this country and supporting especially the SMEs company in Africa and SMEs company in Egypt work with Africa and also African Union support and African bank support. So banking sector is very important. Also financial inclusion and lead and facilitate the process of trade, because today we will support the mobile to make a lot of payment with Africa and also support a bank application bank related to any bank in order to make export or import. So payment of money and secure the process of payment by the National Bank in Egypt and by Central Bank of Egypt will support the Egyptian businessman and African businessman to working together. You as a businessman, you should secure 100% if you will think to start a business in South Africa. And also African businessman will be safe 100% if he takes the decision to start business in Egypt. And also new investment law and amendment done to the Egyptian investment law, facilitating the process of transfer the revenue of the company to the main country. If, for example, some businessman from South Africa come and invest in Egypt, so the profitability of his company located in Egypt have the right to make export, remote transfer of all the currency he gain by any currency, dollars or euro, for example, or any different. So before the new amendment of the Egyptian tax law and the Egyptian investment law, we cannot able to do the same direction. So such adjustment and amendment in new investment law and the new investment also tax law supporting the trade between Egypt and Africa, and a lot of merging of Egypt with Africa in international community like COMESA and like BRICS facilitate the movement of trade between Egypt to Africa, and also supporting the trade between key countries in the world like Russia and like China to make export and import with African countries. Egypt, for example, member in COMESA, and in the same time member in BRICS. So all countries member in COMESA can make export of his product to all countries located to BRICS by the same process and the same policy like Egypt. Some discounts in borders, some discount in tax law, and also all key countries located in COMESA can make export to African country through Egypt, because Egypt member in BRICS and member in COMESA. So it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Egypt play a very key role in movement of trade between Africa country and all countries. Why?
And there is a huge horizon.
Yes,
there is a big horizon for much, much more, right?
Yes.
I mean, there are still great opportunities on hand for a win-win situation. For Egypt and Africa.
Ready 100%, because we have a very strong infrastructure. And the government in the last 10 years spent more and more in infrastructure, spent more and more in new Suez Canal logistics area, in new Suez Canal corridor, is spending more and more in upgrading the also infrastructure in Alex, especially related to Matarim and related to also Alex and also in Sokhna and in Red Sea. And Egypt as a strategic country in Middle East and South Africa will support the trade between Africa and Europe and Africa and China and Russia and key countries like Germany and France also, for example. So we have a lot of a chance to facilitate the trade internal Africa, and we will be ready to open to the international community.
And obviously the will is here, and the keenness is very obvious to expand for even bigger cooperation and hopefully at one stage integration between Egypt and its beloved continent of Africa. Dear viewers, that's all the time we have. Unfortunately, on behalf of you, we thank very much our dear guest with us here in the studio, Mr. Ahmed Kattab, the economic expert. Always a pleasure to have you with us, sir.
Let me present special thanks to my TV team, because you do a wonderful achievement in the field of covering all events related to Africa by English language and French language, and this is add point to Nile TV, and this is a wonderful achievement from the Nile TV team.
Thank you, sir, very much. We love Africa. I mean, it's as simple as that. We love Africa. I'm Mohammed Abdelrahim, thanking you for watching. Goodbye.